Tony Blair is pushing ID cards onto Britain because he is determined to use all of your data to push an agenda with the World Economic Forum, whereby all of us suddenly become serfs, where we own nothing, but we are happy. Many of you will have seen the thing that's gone round social media, gone round WhatsApp, saying that Ewan Blair is going to develop the app for the new Brit card ID system. That is true. And he has made £420 million from the company, Multiverse. But this story is just far bigger than that. It's all to do with the idea of Chinese social credit. It's all to do with the idea of data monitoring, and the experiment that the Brit card needed in order to be rolled out has already been completed in the COVID app. Hello everyone, this is Andre Walker. As you probably know by now, the gentleman that I dragged out of the Trump dinner is attempting to get me legally. Please donate to the Patriot Fund and try to save me. Also, welcome to the place that I live. I'm not going to give you the exact address. So, okay, Multiverse is a company founded in part by Ewan Blair, and it is going to develop the app that sits behind Britcard. Now, I've said on this channel before that this is the fourth time Labour have attempted to bring in an ID card. On the first two occasions, it was successful in the First World War and the Second World War. The third occasion was obviously Tony Blair. And what is interesting, and there is a video on this channel, so I don't want to repeat too much, but what is interesting is the way that after the First World War, the identity card was abolished fairly quickly. It was considered an emergency temporary measure. But at the end of the Second World War, Clement Attlee was elected as British Prime Minister in that great Labour government that brought in the NHS and also bankrupted the country. But he came in and he wanted to keep the card. It was only when the case of, I think, Charles Wilcox went all the way to the High Court, when it was said that using an ID card would make British people no longer law-abiding citizens. It would make law-abiding people lawless, that it was abolished by Churchill in '52. But then let's look at Blair's actual proposal, because that is the third time they tried to bring in the national identity card. And I think it's really interesting. So the basic idea was this: that you would walk into a bank, you would walk into a police station, you would walk into the NHS, you would walk into a social security office, anywhere that was owned by the public sector. And by the way, there were banks owned by the public sector, I think at the time, just about. Anyway, what would happen is that you would put your card into a machine and they would immediately be able to open up all your data. And what they'd be able to see is everywhere you have ever lived, the balance in your bank account, all of your financial transactions, all of your tax records, all of your medical records. Now, if it were me, here's what I would do. I would, if I was a police officer and I arrested you, I would look at all your details, just a matter of course, just go, well, I wonder who this person is. And I think that's precisely what happened, to a far lesser extent than is possible now, at the end of the Second World War. But why is Blair interested in this so much? Well, actually, it's not to do with bringing up this data. It's all to do with trend analytics. It's this idea that David Cameron brought in of the nudge. So what would happen is you would decide what you wanted people to do, and then you would look at trends of how to make them do it. So as an example, with the COVID, there was a major experiment of how to stop people leaving their houses and how to get them back out from their houses. How to get them to stay in was to say that they would die of coronavirus if they left the house, and that kept people in, and that experiment was very successful. And then, of course, get people out. Do you remember Eat Out to Help Out, where food was half price? That was because behavioural scientists wanted to know whether they could lock people up under house arrest and then people would be willing to go out immediately. Because obviously it's incredibly difficult to tell people one day it's a risk to their lives to leave their house, and the next day demand that they go out to jobs and shops and restaurants. So of course there was that bribery element. So all of the elements of this app have already been used by behavioural scientists to work things out. And the general idea that Blair has is this: that fundamentally democracy is a failure. And what he believes in is shielding democracy, or the stakeholder society. And what that means is that basically democracy that doesn't produce liberalism is not democracy, and therefore cannot be allowed to continue. And so what you do is you get the right to vote for people at the top, but fundamentally nothing ever changes. The stakeholder society is very, very simple, isn't it? It means that every single political decision is just consulted with the same charities, NGOs and World Economic Forums and World Health Organisations and whatever. They're all consulted on it, and what they say really goes. Next point is on this internationalism. We should all be part of the international liberal world order. But then what do you do with people who don't agree with it? Well, it's very, very simple. Behavioural science and trend analytics. If you look at what Tony Blair believes Dominic Cummings did during the Brexit referendum. By the way, here's what Dominic Cummings actually did. He was able to spread the message to people using Facebook and Cambridge Analytica and contact people who had never been engaged in the political process, 4 million of them. By the way, they weren't the only people that voted for Brexit, but it is an interesting thing. What Tony Blair thinks he did was that he used the power of social media, the power of trend analytics to ensure that people did what he said. So the fundamental Blair idea here is that Blair will sit there and say, right, we need the public to back, as an example, uncontrolled immigration. The way we're going to do that now is we're going to harness the power of social media, harness the power of trend analytics, and we're going to work out how we can force people to agree without them knowing that they agree. Now, if that is not the road to serfdom, I don't know what is. If that is not slavery, if that is not a diminution of democracy, I don't know what is. And so my point about all of these things is very simply this. If you're worried about papers, please, I get that. If you're worried about Ewan Blair having his hand in the till, I get that as well. But what you've really got to be worried about is things like the World Economic Forum and the World Health Organization, these international bodies of experts, and remember Blair loves his experts, who sit there and they decide what people need to think. And then it's the job of the Brit card and these new units in number 10 Downing Street to push that view onto people and to persuade them to go along with it. I have to say to you, I don't think you're as stupid as perhaps Tony Blair thinks you are. And I don't think it's as easy as people make out. I don't believe that it was Russia or indeed Cambridge Analytica that caused the Brexit vote. I believe it was the bureaucracy and the corruption of Brussels. I believe it was the fact that the European Constitution was only changed by a few words and turned into the Lisbon Treaty. I believe it was the subversion of democracy. I believe that it was the fact that we had turned an idea of working together into a new thing, which was about being governed and ruled by the Empire of Belgium. I believe that those are the reasons for the Brexit referendum. But whatever you think about that, and you can say to me now, you can go, well, Andre, you've made this entire video and you've gone on about the risk of trend analytics and the risk of nudge theory and the risk of leading people and all that. And then at the end of the video, you've said that you don't believe it's ever worked in the past. You don't believe that Russia won the Brexit referendum, and you don't believe that that Cambridge Analytica was involved either. No, I don't. But I do believe there's an enormous danger in a government that comes from a starting position of this. We will be told what to do by the World Health Organization. We will be told what to do by the World Economic Forum. We will be told what to do by the UN. We will be told what to do by the EU. Our job as politicians and as the British government is to get you to agree with them. Now, if you remember why we abolished police authorities, because what it was supposed to be was every community like this would elect a delegate or appoint a delegate from their council to go and hold the chief constable to account. What actually happened was these people were paid £35,000 a year or whatever it was, and they would come to their communities and explain why the chief constable was right. That is the danger of Britcard, and to me it's something that's catastrophic, and it's something that Tony Blair has recognised from day one, but the tech did not exist until now. So Ewan Blair, congratulations on making 400 million. I don't care. Until next time, goodbye, but please do subscribe and please do donate to the Patriot Fund. I'm going to need a few quid for legal fees. Until next time, goodbye.